Mr. Chairman.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The next item is access to body-worn camera footage emergency declaration resolution of 2019. Councilmember White, Rayon White.
Thank you, Chairman Mendelson. Today, along with my colleagues, council members Allen, Grasso, Robert White, Shea, Nadeau, McDuffie, and Bonds, I'm introducing the access to body-worn camera footage emergency declaration resolution of 2019 and as it relates to emergency and temporary bills. This emergency legislation will approve adjustments to the access provisions of the body-worn camera program to allow for close relatives of a subject depicted in the footage to have access if the subject is deceased. Access to body-worn camera footage is currently extended to the subject of the footage and their legal representation. Access is also provided to a minor's parents or legal guardian. The current regulations do not consider who shall be provided access in the event of a death of the subject. This lack of consideration is most impactful when the footage depicts the homicide of the subject. I see we're joined by Mr. Brown, who lost a loved one in a similar situation. In instances of police-involved shootings, the lack of access by close relatives such as the parents of the subject do not forward the transparency goal that the body-worn camera program was designed to forward. There have been instances where the parent of the deceased person have not been able to access the body-worn camera footage. In the case of Marquise Austin, which has added an emotional distress that follows the death of a child. This emergency legislation will bring relief to the families that are in similar situations. I want to thank also one of my council colleagues, Councilmember Allen, for working on similar issues as relates to these particular matters to the public, and I want to move this measure.
Thank you, Councilmember White. We have the declaration before us. Is there discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Allen.
Thank you very much. Launched in 2014, MPD's body-worn camera program was intended to provide, at the time, unparalleled level of transparency to policing in the district. Body-worn cameras would record an officer's interactions with the community that they serve. An officer's behavior, both the good and the bad, would be captured on camera. Residents who felt they were mistreated by the police would no longer have to be just taken at their word when filing complaints. And when officers deployed force against residents, ranging from minor contact or discharging a firearm, there would now be a record to consult when determining whether the force deployed by an officer was justified or excessive. But recent events have revealed one way in which our body-worn camera program fails in achieving the transparency that we had hoped that it would. On June 12, 2018, Marquise Austin was fatally shot by Metropolitan Police Department officers in Southeast D.C. In the months following that shooting, Marquise's mother, Kenethia Austin, received only scant communication from the Metropolitan Police Department and was not permitted to view the footage of the shooting. It was only after Ms. Alston enlisted the aid of the Washington Lawyers Committee that she was able to view the footage of the officers involved in her son's death at MPD headquarters. This was done in front of an assistant chief and with an arbitrary limit placed on the number of people who could accompany her. Why? Because under our current regulations, the only people entitled to view body-worn camera footage are the subject of the footage, their legal representative, and in cases where the subject is a minor, the subject's parents or guardians. This isn't to say that MPD itself couldn't go beyond the floor the regulations have set, and in fact it did, allowing Ms. Alston to view it. Or MPD could just amend the regulations to be more explicit. So paradoxically, the department may deny a family access to body-worn camera footage in situations when the need for transparency is perhaps at its greatest in the wake of an officer-involved shooting. So this is simply unacceptable. When a loved one has been killed by police, whether that's justified or unjustified, the family of the deceased should receive a full accounting of what transpired. What conclusions a family might draw about the death of their loved one should be their own. But when MPD keeps a family in the dark about the circumstances of their loved one's death, people are left with the conclusion the department may have something to hide. That's why I'm proud to be co-introducing this legislation with my Ward 8 colleague. This bill will explicitly grant the next of kin, or their legal representatives, the right to view the body-worn camera footage at a police station in the district where the incident occurred. We held a hearing looking at the past 5 years of our body-worn camera program on October 21st at a roundtable. As I said then, it's time for us to be able to take a look at the 5 years of what we've learned. At the time, 5 years ago, the district was at the forefront. Now many other jurisdictions and cities across the nation have body-worn camera programs, and it's time for us to be able to do a review. We've begun that review to take a holistic look at where we've come and where we need to go, especially in the case of police-involved shooting. But that larger holistic action should be, as we work on that, this action today should be able to move forward because I think there's an urgent need for it demonstrated by the experience of the Alston family. So I appreciate my Ward 8 colleagues' work on this and the partnership of so many of us, and encourage my colleagues' support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Gray.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to express my appreciation to Councilmember Trayon White for his leadership on this issue. We've certainly seen some instances I have in Ward 7 where families were not treated with the level of respect that they are due. And it seems to me that the legislation that's before us today, which I'm happy to support, will allow us to be able to remove these unnecessary impediments from the lives of families who obviously should have every right to be able to view footage that may further elucidate for them the issues that they are sadly and unfortunately experiencing at that point. So I'm pleased to support this legislation today, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Councilmember Trayon White for his leadership.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Further discussion? We have the declaration before us. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. On the underlying bill, Access to Body-Worn Camera Footage Emergency Amendment Act of 2019, Councilmember White.
So moved.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.